Matthew 25:14 through 30 tells a parable that could be perhaps also named as Jesus' explanation of God's just judgment in the economy of the kingdom, also known as the parable of the talents. A talent was a biblical measure of wealth considered to be about 60 to 80 pounds of either silver or gold. This means that the employer in the story may have given even the least skilled of his employees about $1 million with which to work, making wise investments. This was to be their job for a season until he decided it was time to examine their results. How many of us would like to start a new job investing $1 million for our boss? And yet, that is essentially what happened when we were sent here to earth and God blessed us with time, which is far more valuable than money. As usual, Jesus tells this parable to explain the kingdom of God, or heaven culture, to those who want to grow closer to him. Jesus always uses parables and riddles in his public teaching, rather than just declaring his message plainly to the public. Why? And Jesus frequently instructs people not to tell their fellow Israelites about the miracles he did for them. Why? And when thousands of people become offended at Jesus' controversial teaching and decide to abandon him, he doesn't beg them to stay or promise to explain himself in a more socially acceptable way in order to maintain their support. Why? Unlike many ministers throughout history who have worked so hard at trying to gather people to themselves by polishing their public image and being agreeable, Jesus remained unconcerned about whether or not people liked him. He lived completely free from the fear of man and unmoved by the empty promises of worldly systems and religious institutions. He lived for an audience of one, with a capital O, faithful to his Father and heavenly employer who provided him with the priceless talents of time on earth, the awesome opportunity to invest in the eternal rewards of the everlasting joy set before him. In direct contradiction to much of our modern culture that rewards narcissism, Jesus kept his focus on his Father rather than himself. This lifestyle caused Jesus to become famous as a byproduct, but his fame was unsought. And it even hindered his ability to teach in well-populated areas, eventually limiting him to ministering only in the rural places out in the middle of nowhere. Perhaps the reason he spoke in riddles was because he knew that speaking the truth plainly would get him arrested ahead of schedule, ending his ministry prematurely. Perhaps it was because he knew that people must be ready to receive each new level of truth, just like teaching children, or else it causes unnecessary strife and controversy. This is why the Bible warns against casting your pearls before swine, who do not recognize the value of great truths and will therefore only get upset and then try to tear you to pieces for not feeding them what they want to hear. When the Bible compares such people to pigs, it's not speaking of their inherent worth, but rather of their chosen identity, priorities, and the habit of consistently rejecting truth in a desperate attempt to prolong their enjoyment of chaos and corruption indefinitely. This is the condition in which we find the third servant in Jesus' parable of the talents. His heart belongs to the world rather than to the Lord, whom he eventually admits that he distrusts and resents. This character in the story represents all of the people who choose to live committed to confusion, wrapping themselves up in lies like a blanket, daily cultivating a state of spiritual insanity, strong-arming God out of their lives and fighting to defend their delusions in a desperate attempt to justify their preferred lifestyle choices, which are far below what God desires for them. For all who keep rejecting Jesus, their temporary enjoyment of worldly things is all that they have and all that they want. And eventually, even that is taken away from them, leaving them spiritually bankrupt and emotionally devastated as unwise stewards of God's precious time that had been so generously given to them. Nevertheless, they deliberately ignore the heart of the giver with a capital G, who still longs for a spiritually satisfying and eternally prosperous heart-to-heart connection with them, so that they might enjoy life in the constant overflow of his abundance in all things, here and now, as well as in the age to come. Sadly, this message can apply even to Christians who settle for a life full of distractions from God. Despite the general consensus of many past ministers, the main point of this parable is not salvation. If it was, then there would have been need of only two servants in the story. One who listened to the spirit of love and was changed thereby, and one who listened to the spirit of fear and was changed thereby. However, Jesus intentionally chose to include three servants in order to illustrate that there are more than two choices of how to handle our time talents with him, and more than two levels of results available to us. It may be helpful to note here that the investing period of time spoken of in the parable can refer to both our entire lives on earth, as well as the different seasons of life and stages of growth through which we travel, providing us with the ability to receive and enjoy ever-increasing grace and peace from God for each consecutive mission. From this vantage point, we can see clearly that the parable was not primarily given to show the difference between citizens of heaven and citizens of hell, but rather as an explanation of God's economy, a powerful invitation to become partners with Jesus, sharing in the lifelong, delightful discipline of Father focus. In all situations, and rejoicing in our growing sensitivity to the good things that God is always saying and doing. The main distinction among all three servants, the primary factor that determined how much they were able to receive from the Lord, was their opinion of God, his character, and his nature. How much they believed him to be a hard master or a kind master. How much they believed him to be miserly or generous. Whether they believed him to want to limit them to the role of mere servants, or whether they could see the future that he wanted to promote them to the role of permanent partners, sharing in his joy and great wealth, as he invited the first two who were faithful in the end of the parable. Where are we in this sliding scale of belief in God, in his goodness? What perspectives do we hold about God's will and God's ways regarding the challenging areas in our lives? Like all three servants in the parable of the talents, the lens through which we view God determines our skill level in our service to Him and the benefits we are able to receive from Him. What you believe about God is the most important thing about you, because it either allows or blocks Him from improving your circumstances. Contrary to popular opinion, it's not up to God how much we receive from Him. The curious characteristic of every human soul is that we come to believe whatever we choose to hear the most, whether accurate beliefs or inaccurate beliefs. And those beliefs determine how much we can receive from God. As Jesus says, your faith has made you well, and according to your faith, be it unto you. Faith here is seeing God's grace, His desire to help, to heal, and to bless, and His ability to do so. The more we get a picture of that kind of God, those characteristics of the true God, the more He is able to touch down with all of His miracle-working power on the landing pad of our faith. These are the physics of the supernatural world. The more we choose to hear about God's desire to bless us with His supernatural healing power and provision in every area, the more our desires change, and the more we actually want to live close to Him, sharing everything with Him and experiencing His rich rewards in all things as a natural result of our hearts and minds being changed through intimacy with the person who is love Himself. Jesus decides to end the parable with a serious warning to all people about how to spend the precious talents of our time here on earth. If we persist in refusing to grow to that next level in closeness in our relationship with the Lord, the inevitable result is the tears of regret when we finally see all that God was trying to provide for us, all of His great plans for us that we stubbornly resisted in favor of our own mediocre plans, and all that we could have become had we only kept listening to His unconditional invitation to all to learn to lean into Him closer than ever in the ordinary moments of life, to enjoy the sense of His tangible presence within us and all around us, so that we are changed by love.